So we have a question from Paul, and this one's a little different. I have a 14-year-old male athlete doing wrestling, track, and football, asking at what age we can introduce. Now, you say creatinine here, which is different than creatine, and I don't know anything about creatinine into his diet. He's just wanting to lift and improve his strength. Well, I'm not a fan, obviously, of creatine. I mean, it's fine. If you're a responder to creatine, you respond. If not, you don't want to sit next to them in class because they get the farts. Um, I I don't. I'm not a big fan of over supplementing a 14-year-old, only because puberty is mild and sleep, sleep, eating protein in every meal, sleep, and nature are going to do a lot more than 5 sets of 2 versus 5 sets of 3. Uh, I would just, if you're doing this, for wrestling, it's going to be a deterrent. It's going to be not helpful because body weight's going to keep moving up in classes. Depending on the weight, the event in track and field, it might help or might not help. It depends. Some people get cramps when they do creatine. It was a big issue when it first came out. I don't know how they changed it, but it was a big deal. Mostly like hamstring cramps, but most people increase their bench and squat on creatine, but that's because they went up. I guess creatine helps you hold body uh, water. But if you put on a lot of mass on your pecs and deltoids, your bench is going to go up because of the range of motion is different, and there's more of a bounce pad there. But for football, generally, I've had a lot of people tell me it's really quite good for a lot of their football players. Again, the warning on cramps, though, I would also be very concerned if the boy was on any kind of. I'm not qualified to talk about this, but I understand that a lot of teenage boys now are on drugs for ADHD. The downside of these drugs is that basically they're in the amphetamine family. Of course, that's always forgotten to discuss. But combining some of the drugs that the boys take for their focus changes the rules about heat stroke and what's sunstroke. If those are different anymore, I don't. Heat exhaustion. I remember we used to have to memorize heat exhaustion, sunstroke, and heat stroke, and like they were different. Now, as I've been told, they're all basically in the same little family of things now. Though obviously, severe sunburns is another category we should throw in there too. So, if your athletes are on these kinds of medically diagnosed and prescribed pills, not not the other way to get things, you really have to think through creatine a little bit just because of the maybe the issues of cramping. Um, Anytime, Paul, you think about adding something, you always fall into a little matrix. All of a sudden, a spreadsheet, an algorithm. Okay, so if you press if you press this button, this happens. If you press this button, this happens. And if you press both buttons, we don't know. We haven't tried it yet. So I'm not a big fan of experiments of one. Uh, just I would say be a little conservative, a little more conservative than you think. Um, Maybe I would even consider waiting on it. I would have a frank and open discussion with the parents involved and maybe any other coaches, and then monitor it. And I'm not. This isn't like they're playing with atomic devices or anything, but yet at the same time, you don't want to. You certainly don't want the heat stroke family. That's something you don't want, or the rhabdo stuff. That's what you don't want. But you also don't want a hamstring pull. And trust me, if he was anything like me, I mean, just wait a couple of years and he blows up. Yeah.